Hi, welcome to this video about moderated mediation with process for R. Primarily, we'll be looking at the process models 7 and 8, but in the end I will give you some hints for the process models 14 and 15 as well. Process model 7 is a moderated mediation in which the A path of the mediation is moderated, whereas model 8 has a moderation for the A path and the direct path C' as well. First, I'm going to show you how to use process with R. Then I'll show you a moderated mediation syntax for process models 7 and 8. Then I'll show you how to interpret the output. And in the end, I'll give you a preview for models 14 and 15. That is, for a moderated B path. So, how to use process with R? Process for R is not a package. It's a user-defined function. There are packages around with process as part of the name, but those are not the original process macro. If you want to use process, you download it from Hay's website. You'll find a link in the description. In the downloaded directory, you'll find a path process beta for R. And there you'll find an R file with the name process.r. And you have to open it and run it each session you are using process, because running this process.r file initializes the process function. Running it takes a minute or two, so please be patient. If you've done that, you can run a moderated mediation syntax. Before we look at the command, 4 important points. First, you have to put in variables with quotation signs. Second, variables in R are case sensitive. The next important point, you may use a binary variable, for instance as an independent variable or as a moderator, but it must not be a factor variable. So if you have a binary variable you want to include, which is a factor variable, you have to transform it into a numeric variable first. And process is written in lowercase letters. This is an example code for a moderated mediation, in this case for model 8. It starts with the name of the function process. Here I've put in the name of my data frame, here my dependent variable, my independent variable, my mediator, and my moderator. Here the model number. If you want to analyze model number 7, you just change the number. In this case, I've included one covariate. I'd like to mean center variables that are part of product terms, but only as long as they are continuous variables. And I can accomplish this with center equals 2. For conditional effects, I prefer looking at -1 standard deviation, mean, and +1 standard deviation. In order to get those conditional results, I have to set the moments parameter to 1. The key results of moderated mediation are bootstrapped, so they are robust against possible violations of the normality or the homoscedasticity assumption. But all the other model parameters are not bootstrapped as a default. So if you want to have robust results there too, you should set model BT to 1. I'd like to increase the number of bootstrap samples to 10,000, and I'd like to provide a seed value for the random numbers generator. Bootstrapping is a random process, so each time you use process with the same data, for the bootstrap results you will get slightly different numbers, that is slightly different limits of the confidence intervals. If you want to get the exact same results each time, then you can set a seed value. It doesn't have to be this number. As far as I know, it could be any positive integer number. In addition to this syntax, there are other parameters that can be useful. In the example, I have included one covariate, but you can include more than one covariate. In this case, you have to bind the covariates together with a C operator. you could request robust standard errors with the HC parameter. However, nowadays I prefer bootstrapping as another robust method. For the moderation, you could request Johnson-Neyman significance regions by setting JN to 1. You could change the number format, for instance, to 3 decimal places, and you could change the confidence level. 95% is the default value, but if you want to use a Bonferroni correction, you could change this value. So, with this example code, I've run a moderated mediation, and now we'll be looking at the output. Some parts of the output are the same for model 7 and 8, and some differ. The output starts with general information that looks more or less the same for model 7 and 8. Here the model number, the variables, the sample size, and our custom seed value. In model 7, we have only a moderation of the A path. This is the model for the A path, the model summary, the model with its coefficients, and important here is the interaction. Because if this interaction gets significant, we have a moderated A path. Here's the effect. It is a B, that is an unstandardized regression weight, not a beta. Standard error T statistic, and here the p-value. And in this case, the interaction is significant, so we have a significant interaction for the A path, that is a moderated A path. Here we can find the effect size for our moderation, which is quite small in this case. Less than 1% of the variance is explained by the interaction. And if we have a significant interaction, we get these simple slopes, that is conditional effects, for 3 different values of the moderator, -1 standard deviation, mean, and +1 standard deviation. We get the effect, that is the B, and whether it's significant or not. Please note that the mean of the moderator is 0 here. That is because we have used mean centering, and the mean of a mean-centered variable is 0. This model of the A path is the same for models 7 and 8. Where it's different is the model for the B path and the C prime path. Here, model 7, we have the regression weight for the B path, that is the effect from the mediator to the dependent variable, which is significant in this case, and we have the effect from the independent variable on the dependent variable, that is the C prime path. For model 8, that's different. There we have a moderation for the direct effect. So here, the model for the B path and the C prime path is more complex, because now we have a moderation, the moderation for the C prime path. Here we find the B path from the mediator to the dependent variable, which is significant for model 8. And here we find the interaction for the direct effect C prime, which is significant here. So we have a significantly moderated direct effect. Here's the effect size for this moderation, and here are the conditional effects for the direct effect. Now we come to the key part of the output, the direct and indirect effects of X on Y. This is for model 7. We had a significant direct effect, but the important information is down here, the index of moderated mediation. This index tells us whether we have a moderated mediation, that is a conditional indirect effect. We don't have a p-value here. Instead, we have bootstrap confidence intervals. And we have to look at those 2 limits, the lower limit and the upper limit, whether those limits include the 0 or not. In this case, they don't include the 0, so this index of moderated mediation is significant. So we know that we have a moderated indirect effect. If that is the case, we look at the conditional indirect effects. That is, at indirect effects for 3 different levels of the moderator. -1 standard deviation, mean, and +1 standard deviation of the moderator. And here we see the effects for those 3 levels of the moderator. And with the confidence intervals, we see that for all 3 values of the moderator, we have a significant indirect effect. This is the same output for model 8. The key part down here is the same. We have an index of moderated mediation, and we have conditional indirect effects we can interpret if we have a significant index of moderated mediation. What's different is the direct effect, because now we have a moderation modeled for the direct effect, so we get 3 different values for conditional direct effects. And in the end, we want to look at robust results for the model parameters for the 2 models, the model for the A path and the model for the B and C prime path. Because those are bootstrapped, we don't have p-values. Instead, we have to look at the confidence intervals. And confidence intervals that don't include 0 confirm significant regression weights. The same for model 8. Here, the second model for the B path and the C prime path is a bit more complex again, because we have an interaction and a moderator that we didn't have for model number 7. And in the end, we should look at the analysis nodes and errors. Here the level of the confidence intervals, the number of bootstrap samples, the way we have requested the conditional effects with ±1 standard deviation and the mean, and here the node which variables were mean-centered. Finally, let's look at the models 14 and 15. Model 14 is a model where the B path is moderated, and model 15 is a model where the B path and the C prime path is moderated. In general, you should almost always prefer model number 15 to model number 14. The reason behind that is this. Most of the time, we don't really know whether the direct effect is moderated or not. The problem is if you use model number 14, that is a model without a moderation for the direct effect, but the direct effect is moderated in reality, then we can get seriously biased results. So I would always include a moderation for the C prime path. In most cases, I would prefer model number 8 to model number 7 as well, but here for the B path, it's much more problematic. Therefore, I'll show you only output examples from model 15 and not from model 14. The example code for model 15 is quite simple. You just have to change the model number. You can find this and all the other code examples on the companion webpage to this tutorial. So you can just copy-paste the code from there. The link to the companion webpage is in the description of this video. If you want to interpret process models 14 or 15, the most parts are more or less the same. The index of moderated mediation is what counts. So for those models too, the important question is the index of moderated mediation significant or not? If the index of moderated mediation is significant, you look at the conditional indirect effects, which again are the indirect effects, that is the mediated effects at 3 different levels of the moderator. What changes a little bit are the regression models, because now the B path is moderated and not the A path anymore. So a short look at the output of model 15. The model for the A path is quite simple because now we don't have a moderation there. The interesting thing is this line, the effect from the independent variable on the mediator, that is the A path, which is significant in this case. The second model is more complex because now we have 2 interactions here. In order to know which interaction is which, we look at the product terms key, and we can see interaction 1 is the interaction between independent variable and moderator. That's the moderation for the direct effect C prime. And more interestingly for us, interaction 2 is the interaction for the B path. In this example, both are not significant. And here we would see the effect sizes for both possible moderations, which are quite non-existent in this example. And again, to the key part of the output, the conditional direct effects, the index of moderated mediation, which is not significant in this case. So we don't have a moderated mediation with a moderation of the B path. And since the index of moderated mediation isn't significant, we shouldn't really interpret the conditional indirect effects. I hope this has been helpful for you. You'll find links to my other statistic tutorials on my website.